Welcome back to Inclusive Design 24, 2025, brought to you in partnership with our Platinum supporters, Accessibility Cloud and Intopia. You can follow us on Mastodon and Blue Sky, and if you have any questions for Beau, post them using the ID24 hashtag, or you can use the YouTube chat if you prefer. We'll gather your questions for our QA at the end of the session. A reminder that ID24 is a respectful community, and you can find our code of conduct on the Inclusive Design 24 website. I'm delighted to be joined by my guest host, Terence Eden. Terence, over to you.
Thanks so much, Ian. We're so lucky today. We've got the incredible Beau Vass all the way from Australia joining us, giving us their wisdom. A talk that I know lots of people are looking forward to, which is called A False Sense of Accessibility, What Automated Testing Tools Are Missing. This is such an important topic, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from him. So, Beau, over to you.
Thanks so much, Terence and Ian. Appreciate that. So I'm Beau Vass. I'm presenting A False Sense of Accessibility, What Automated Tools Are Missing. It's great to be here to be part of this awesome event as well. So thank you for having me, and thanks everyone who is watching live or watching the videos later, especially to anyone watching live from Australia right now, getting up bright and early for this one. Very much appreciated. So just to start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which that I'm presenting from today, which is the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So just firstly, a little bit about myself. So I'm the technical lead of the digital accessibility practice at TTC Global. Previously, I was the lead auditing and testing consultant for Vision Australia's digital accessibility team. And in a whole other life, I was a web developer for over a decade, web developer and senior and lead front-end developer as well, before moving into accessibility. And our digital accessibility practice is part of TTC Global. So TTC Global is a software assurance company specializing in things like quality assurance, test management, test automation, and test resourcing. My team is the digital accessibility practice, which is an accessibility consultancy. So we provide services like accessibility audits, consulting, strategic guidance, tooling guidance, training and coaching, and design reviews, and a lot more services as well. We have some training coming up. We're currently doing a WCAG deep dive training session, and we have a few more coming up. So you can go to our website to check out any of that or to see what our team is up to. But to get into the content, firstly, I want to talk a little bit about what an automated testing tool is. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be focusing on website-based testing tools. There are testing tools for mobile apps, and even Microsoft's programs have their little automated accessibility tools, and there's plugins you can get for systems like Figma and those sorts of things. And the principles are going to be somewhat similar for everything, but we're going to look at examples of website-based automated tools. So there's a number of different types of automated accessibility testing tools. And I'm just going to take you through just a few examples of those to get a bit of an idea of what we are talking about. So firstly, the most popular and common types of automated testing tool are the browser-based testing tools. So they're often plugins you can get, or they might be part of a browser that will run a quick check on the page that you currently have open, so one page at a time. So on the screen at the moment, we have a couple of examples of some of those tools. We have the Wave tool from WebAIM, we have Axe DevTools from DQ, and we have Google's Lighthouse, which is part of the Chrome browser. And you can see that we've run a test on the digital accessibility practice website, Wave's coming up with 0 errors. It's coming up with a couple of other bits of information. Axe DevTools comes up with 0 issues. And then we've got Lighthouse taking a different approach where it's giving us a score out of 100, which we've got 100. So that's going to make anyone feel pretty good about their website or this particular page if they're getting 100 and a nice bold success green color to go with it. We're going to talk about that particular sense of confidence that brings in a little bit. I'll move on to the next kind of tool. So we've got crawlers. They can test a number of pages at once. They can go through, potentially crawl an entire website, following links for you to cover as many pages as possible, or you can kind of choose sections of a website you want to test, or even potentially user journeys. So the example here is of UsableNet's Aqua tool. DQ also have a tool that does similar functions. And so that can give you a chance to test a whole lot of pages at once, more than a human could test manually. But also there's often a cost involved in these tools as well. And there also needs to be someone to manage the data as well. Once testing is done, you can test all those pages and get a whole lot of results, but someone needs to go through and work out what needs to be worked on and how that's going to happen, and make sure that all the results are being communicated in the right way. But you'll notice that on this screenshot here, we've got a few different pages, and it's showing the number of tests that are passed and failed, etc., similar to the browser-based tools. So then we've got code linters. So code linters can be set up in a developer's development environment. So while they're writing code, the linter can be pointing out that there might be issues, accessibility issues in places, and that can allow a developer to fix the issues potentially before they happen. And we've got integrated tools, things like SiteImprove or Monsito, that tend to be sitting and running in the background. It might be a plugin via JavaScript on the website, or maybe it's integrated into the CMS system itself, and can potentially have up-to-date information at all times in a dashboard or something like that. And again, you kind of notice on the screenshots here, they're giving a score out of 100 for these two types of testing tool. And they're pointing out the number of failures potentially at different levels of WCAG, level A, AA, or AAA as well. So all these tools, they work differently, but the way they test for accessibility issues is generally relatively the same. Most automated testing tools have the same abilities and limitations when it comes to how they find accessibility issues, and also the types of accessibility issues that they can't find. So just to take us back here to the browser-based tools, you may have noticed, if you're able to read some of the fine print, on the Wave tool, we've got a little message on the bottom. It says, "Congratulations, no errors detected. Manual testing is still necessary to ensure compliance and optimal accessibility." So pointing out that there is some manual testing required. And on Lighthouse, on the right side of screen, it says, "These checks highlight opportunities to improve the accessibility of your web app. Automatic detection can only detect a subset of issues and does not guarantee the accessibility of your web app. So manual testing is also encouraged." So they are pointing out that there is manual testing needed. The language both of them use, I would say, hints at the fact that maybe the automated tools is kind of catching most of the accessibility issues, and there's just some manual testing to kind of cover some of the edges that the automated tools aren't reaching. But that sentiment is fairly far from accurate. And I will point out as well that these tools are testing usually against a rule set, and that is often WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or it might be testing another set of standards. And it's important to recognize that WCAG is only part of accessibility. There's a lot more to accessibility than just WCAG or just any set of standards. So it's important to remember that too, that these tools are limited within the rule set that they're testing against, as well as potentially limited in how much of that rule set they can actually test for. So it's kind of widely stated that automated accessibility testing tools can only find about 20 to 30% of accessibility issues. So not 100. Google Lighthouse might kind of hint that it can get to 100, but yeah, 20 to 30% is the number that's thrown around. And what's not really as widely stated, at least in my experience, is what that actually means in practice. Normally that number's kind of mentioned and we kind of move on. Is 20 to 30% good? It sounds pretty good for an automated testing process. But very rarely have I seen or heard discussion that goes further than that into, well, what is the tool actually finding? What is part of that 20 to 30%? And what is outside of that 20 to 30%? What are accessibility testing tools missing? And why are they missing those issues? So what I wanted to do with this presentation was to go into a little bit more detail about what are some examples of the issues that automated tools are able to find and what some examples of issues they're not able to find. There are potentially hundreds and hundreds of different accessibility issues that are possible on a website. So I just want to look at one set of accessibility issues. So I'm going to focus on some issues related to images at first to kind of deep dive into those. And then we'll look at a couple of other different types of accessibility issues as well. But I want to deep dive to give add a bit more context to that number of the 20 to 30%. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use this image, and I'll describe that in a second. So I'm going to use this for a number of different examples. And this image shows two laptop computers on a light-colored surface. The laptops are back-to-back facing potentially opposite edges of a table. One of the laptops has two hands using the keyboard, and the other one has one hand using the trackpad. Some books, papers, and stationery, and a few gadgets on the table as well. I'm describing this for the purposes of anyone who isn't able to see the screen at this point in time and is just listening. That would not make a good alt text description. I just thought I'd put that out there. We would want something much more succinct. But I'm going to use this in the context of examples of informative images and examples of decorative images at different points. And so an informative image is an image that is providing information to a user, and a decorative image is an image that is not providing information to a user. There's a lot more nuance than that, but that's in its most simplest form how I can explain informative and decorative images. So the first example is an example that an automated tool can find. And that is whether the image element in HTML, which is the IMG element, has an alt attribute as part of that element. So we've got a code sample here, and that is the image element, IMG, and it has a source attribute of laptops.jpg, but there's nothing else in the image element, so there's no alt attribute. Every image must have an alt attribute. An informative image will have an alt attribute with a value of the description of the image, and a decorative image would have an alt attribute that has an empty value. So in this instance, the automated tool can find the image elements on the page, and it can easily see there's no alt attribute. So this is one for the automated tools. They can absolutely pick up this issue. However, if we then add the alt attribute and our image is informative, so it should have a description, And just to let you know that the code sample now is the same code sample, the IMG element with the source of laptops.jpg, and the alt attribute is now there, but it is an empty value. So if this is an informative image, an automated tool has no idea that it is supposed to be a informative image. So this is a failure under WCAG, but the automated tool is not able to pick this up because it cannot determine between what is informative and what is decorative. So now if we flip that example around and look at this as a decorative image, now we've got a decorative image and the code sample is the same, but now there is a description in the alt text value, and the description is generic laptops image for decoration. So a bit of a hint there that this was a decorative image, but they've put the description in the alt text, and it actually should be empty for a decorative image. And so this is another accessibility failure that the automated tools will not pick up, again, because they don't know that this image was supposed to be decorative and supposed to have no alt text value. So now we'll look at an informative image that does have a description. We're getting closer to passing this accessibility requirement. So we've got the informative image here with a description. So now the same code sample, but with the alt text description. And I'll remind everyone that we are still using the laptops image. The alt text for this one is a blueberry cheesecake in the middle of a black table, which probably couldn't be much further from the truth. I'm sure very creative people could come up with something more different. But again, so an automated tool cannot determine whether this alt text description is actually describing the image on the page. So it's another issue that the automated tools can't find. So now we'll look at a different example of how to bring an image into a web page. So rather than using the image element, we're now going to use a non-semantic element. So we're going to use the div element in HTML, div. Excuse me. And so in the code sample, we've just got the div element with the class of myImage. And so there will be a background image possibly, or it might be a font icon or an image sprite or something similar to that. That's coming through from the CSS file. So it's not in the HTML markup itself. It's been brought in from the style sheet. There's nothing else on that div element. So an automated tool would have no idea that this is even an image. So it won't even be checking whether there's alt text available for this image or not, because it doesn't even know that it's there. So that's another one that the automated tools can't find. When we use non-semantic HTML elements, so they have no meaning, and so robots and screen readers and automated tools can't know what they actually are for because the semantics are not in the markup itself. But what you can do is you can add semantics using ARIA attributes. So we'll look at an example of that, and we're going to find another issue here that the automated tools can find. So the element using the image role has no alternative text. So now we've got our same div example in the code, and we've added role equals image, IMG, in that attribute. And so this is now communicating that this element is an image. And so now the automated tools can determine that this is an image. And again, like with the image element, it's now able to determine that there's no alt text. And in the case of when you add the semantics through role equals image, you would want to add an ARIA label with the value that is the description of that image. And so the tool can see that that's not there for this image, so it can pick up this problem. So let's see what happens when we add the alt text description through the ARIA label. Now the automated tool is not picking up an issue because there's an ARIA label with the image role, and it has a description. So the automated tool stops there, basically. But if we look at the alt text description in the ARIA label, and again, we're still using the laptop's image, the description of the image in the alt text is mud cake with mint frosting. Maybe that more creative person has arrived and given us an even more wrong image description there for this one. So again, the automated tools can't determine whether the alt text is actually matching the image. So there's another one. So we're going to look at another type of example now using the image role. So what if the image role is applied to an element that isn't supposed to have it? So we've got a screenshot here of a piece of web content. We've got a heading that says creating a more inclusive world for all. We've got a piece of paragraph text, which is highlighted here because it's what we're going to focus on. And that says, we support you to embed accessibility into the way that you work and manage accessibility on your behalf. And then we've got a link that says learn how, which is not part of this presentation, but this is also an accessibility issue potentially that an automated tool can't find in terms of the link labeling. But we'll move on from that and look at this paragraph text. So in our code sample, we've got a paragraph HTML element with the role of image. And then we can see the text that I'd read out that's part of that paragraph text. We support you to embed accessibility into the way that you work, etc. So this role of image has been incorrectly applied to this piece of content. However, the automated tool does not pick up that this problem has happened. It can't determine that this role of image has been placed on the wrong piece of content. It's not an image. Now, the automated tool will pick up an issue here. It just won't be that one. What the issue it will pick up, many of you will realize what this is already, and that is that there's a role of image and there's no alt text, there's no ARIA label. So that's the issue that will come up from the automated tools on this one. And so that leads to a recommendation made by the automated tool. And one example of this from Axe, but they all work similar, is that it will tell you that to solve this problem, you need to fix at least one of the following. ARIA label attribute does not exist or is empty. ARIA labeled by attribute does not exist. References elements that do not exist, or references elements that are empty, or the element has no title attribute. Sounds simple. But the problem is, if we follow the advice of the automated tool on this one, we're going to end up creating a new accessibility issue and also one that the automated tool can't find. And so that is that we add the ARIA label in. So if we maybe didn't have a lot of experience with accessibility and we thought, okay, it's asking us to add an ARIA label to this image role, you'd hope that they would pick up the problem there, that there's the role of image. But let's say they don't for whatever reason. They might think, all right, well, what label can we use for this piece of text? Well, maybe we can summarize it as this is kind of, or we can describe it as what we do. So we'll make the ARIA label what we do, and that kind of describes the content of we support you to embed accessibility, etc. That sort of describes it. So okay, it adds context. So that's great. Well, it's not great because adding an ARIA label to an image role, an element with an image role, will override any text content within that element. So the entire paragraph of text will be blocked. And when the screen reader interacts with that content, it's just going to announce graphic what we do instead of the actual text content that's there. So it's actually blocking users out of content. And now in this example, it's probably not going to be the end of the world. It's just a bit of marketing copy, essentially. But this could very easily happen to something that is very important as well. So it could go from a minor issue, but still an issue, to being potentially a very significant issue where users are blocked from accessing content. And this might actually be very hard to pick up this mistake because anything that isn't visual is going to be a lot harder for developers to pick up or anyone that's testing a website potentially to pick up that there's a problem there unless they are scanning through the code looking for these things or using a screen reader to do some of their testing, both of which would be recommended, by the way. Okay, so our last example of our little images related accessibility issue deep dive is complex images. So a complex image is usually a detailed image that requires a long description. So such as a diagram or maybe showing a process or some kind of infographic or graph, anything that's complicated and will require a longer description than maybe a couple of sentences that you'd normally fit into an alt text description. And so how we'd normally handle that with complex images is that in the alt text of the image, you would have maybe the title of the image or possibly a short summary as well. And then you would inform users within the alt text description of where to go to get a longer description. So in this example, we've got a screenshot of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs diagram. So we've got the heading there, and then we've got we've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. So with the base of physiological, then safety on top of that, social on top of that, and self-esteem, and then the peak of the pyramid, self-actualization. And there's a whole bunch of text content next to each of those levels describing that level. That's also another issue in itself, but just to focus on how we're approaching the complex image in this instance, we've got the image element and we've got the source attribute, and then we've got the alt text attribute. And the description is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then a dash, a detailed description follows image. So the detailed description should be following the image, but the automated tool can't pick up that there's an issue here for the same reasons we've already looked at. It's got the image element, it's got an alt tag, an alt attribute. So there's nothing to see here as far as the automated tool goes, but yet it can't check whether there is a long description. It can't tell if there's a long description in the place that the alt text says there is a long description. And it can't test if there is an alt text description where it's been said that it will be. It can't check whether that is accurate, even if it could tell that it was there. So kind of fails on all fronts on complex images. And just a couple of bonus issues, things like color contrast within an image, whether it meets minimum requirements. Most automated tools are not going to be able to pick those up. And whether images of text are present, so text in the image that doesn't need to be in the image, like those descriptions next to each part of the pyramid, automated tool will not be picking up that they are there and that you should have that content in the regular HTML content of the page. Oh, well, that's the image deep dive. But wait, there's more. There's a lot more. So let's quickly take a look at some different examples of some other issues, accessibility issues, that automated tools are going to not be able to find. So I've got a piece of web content here. There's phone plans. Most people have probably encountered a similar type of layout where we've got a column for each phone plan option, starting from kind of the cheapest and then moving on to more expensive plans. And in the screenshot, we've got a 50 gig $55 per month plan with a little piece of text that says small choice plus plan. Then we've got a 200 gig $65 a month column with the text under it medium choice plus plan. And then we've got a 360 gig $69 a month for 12 months promo plan, which also has a little highlighted tag on the top of this column that says best value. Now, visually, we can easily see the relationship of the content. We can see which plan gigabytes and dollar cost is associated with which plan because of the proximity of the content, because there's borders around each column. And for the best value tag, it is physically adjoining the column that it relates to. So visually, very clear what relates to what. However, because the headings in each of these columns are the plan names, which come after the main details of the plan, the gigabytes and the monetary cost, this is going to be misleading for screen reader users. So just to look at this screenshot, we've got just the same page, but with a bunch of CSS removed, just to mainly highlight how the hierarchy of information looks when you do remove some of the visual styling. So we can see more clearly, we've got the small choice plus plan, medium choice plus plan, and promo plan headings. It's very clear that they are the headings. And you would imagine that all the content after that heading would be related to that heading, and it absolutely should be. So screen reader users will often navigate by heading. So if they navigate by headings in this instance, we can see that the actual values that relate to the plan are before the heading, above the heading. So a screen reader user navigating by heading is possibly going to, or most likely going to miss that that is the related value that's before the heading. But the other problem is navigating through the page top to bottom, they're going to go through the heading, and then before they reach the next heading. So for instance, the medium choice plus plan was the middle plan. The best value plan was actually the last plan on the page, the promo plan. So with medium choice plus plan, you navigate through that content line by line. You end up getting to the end where it says best value, 360 gigabytes, $69 per month for 12 months. And then you get to the heading of promo plan. But a screen reader user has no idea that the content that is before the promo plan heading actually relates to promo plan, not the item before. And this is a very common issue that is on many websites. Whenever you have content that is columns of content next to each other, and there's content before the headings, it's actually going to present, when you don't have the visual styling, as content that relates to the previous item, not the actual item that it belongs to. So definitely one to look out for. And just, sorry, to give you a bit of a closer look, just to see, we've got the medium choice plus plan there with the related gigabytes and monthly cost before the heading. And it's a lot easier to see the breakdown of this, the structure of the headings and content. And now when we think about what's the relationship of the heading and content, before we could see visually it was clear. When that styling's taken away, we can see now that actually it looks like the headings relate to the next plan's value and inclusion. So that can be quite a misleading issue for screen reader users. And possibly, I might say, even maybe for AI, potentially it could cause some confusion, depending on how much the AI is, if it's more code-based, reading the code rather than looking visually at the screen. So captions and transcripts are another one. So there's an image here of some kind of TV show, and there's a character, and the caption says, "I did my job with a plum." And a plum being separate words and plum being the fruit. So an automated tool won't pick up when captions, whether captions or transcripts are actually there at all, nor whether they are accurate. So in this instance, fun little mistake maybe, but the caption could be completely wrong and an automated tool would not let you know. Another example is form validation. So if there are errors on a form, a screen reader user should be informed of those errors and that the form submission is not being successful. But an automated tool can't check whether that has actually occurred. Another example is focus management. And these are just one example of each. There's actually multiple examples potentially of each of these, the types of issues that we're looking at. So focus management is the position that the user is kind of currently at or controlling at any given time. So a keyboard user, where that focus indicator is showing where they're controlling the content, and for a screen reader user, where they are in the page, where are they currently reading, or where are they currently positioned in the page. And so when you have dynamic content, like a modal window opening, or there's lots of different types of dynamic content, you need to manage the focus to make sure that focus is moving to the right place that it needs to be, and then the correct announcements will be made for a screen reader user to let them know that the context of the page has changed and to move them into the position that they should be in. And so in this instance, we've clicked on a little piece of content that has a link on it, that $120 off, little link. We've clicked on that, it's opened a modal window, and the focus has moved into the modal window, which has a little description of that offer. and it's moved on to the close button of that modal window. So it has moved, but an automated tool can't actually know whether that has actually occurred correctly. And using the same screenshot here for keyboard function, an automated tool can't tell you if this close button can be activated with a keyboard and not just a mouse. And that goes for any interactive element. The automated tools can't necessarily tell you that keyboard control will not work. So and that could be if you have a complex, maybe if you had like a home loan calculator with a bunch of interactive elements you can move around. That won't be the screen reader has no. Sorry, not the screen reader. The automated tools have no ability to know whether that is actually the keyboard control is actually working correctly or at all. Then we've got things like headings, links, and labels and whether they're accurate. Or in this case, whether there's potentially hidden text that might be causing a problem. So we've got a date field here with the 25th of 9th, 2025 input into the field. There's a piece of text above the field that says your policy start date must be before 10th of November 2025. So this is a policy, an insurance policy of some kind. But when we look at the code, so the code shows that actually the second element in the code, you might not be able to see this very well, but just to let you know, so there's the paragraph text that we read out, there's the input field there that we read out, but there's also a label that has a class of visually hidden. So it's been hidden from the screen, but it's allowing screen readers to access it so they know what the field is for. The problem here is that the label here given is date of birth, not policy start date. So a developer may have copied the code from one place where it was date of birth for this date field and pasted it somewhere else they needed it and didn't realize there's actually hidden content there that they need to update with the proper label for this field. An automated tool would have no idea that this is a mistake. It doesn't know. It would just see that this field has a label, so it would say all good. This would be quite confusing for a user because the policy start date has to be after today. So they might struggle to get their date of birth in. Maybe they'll think they've gone back, gone back in time. That's the one I was thinking of. Okay, so just a couple more. So non-native custom component, so like a tab element or an accordion element, disclosure pattern element, both of these require or there's no native HTML used to build these or to make these features accessible. So they are custom components. So you need to actually inform machines that they are custom components. So for a tab component, you'd add role equals tab, and you'd add a bunch of other things within the tab component to make sure that's accessible. The problem is, so if you have role equals tab on a tab set, an automated tool will pick up that that should be a tab set, and it will give you some advice on any issues that you might have with that tab element. So it can do a little bit with that. But if you don't add role equals tab in the first place, if you don't know you need to do that, the automated tool also has no idea that this is a tab component. So it will completely ignore that piece of content. It will not even tell you that that should be a tab component. So again, automated tools completely unaware of this. And status updates and notifications. So when you have something that says it's saved successfully, or maybe you're not allowed to edit, or something went wrong, when that sort of pops up on the screen somewhere, that should be announced to a screen reader user. They need to know that these things have occurred. But an automated tool has no idea that these are happening. It also has no idea if the messages are staying on the screen visually long enough to be accessible as well, if they're set to automatically disappear. So an automated tool can't do that either. So it's a very false sense of accessibility. And so that 20 to 30% hopefully now has a bit of a different context for when you hear that number, to have a bit of an idea of what is in that 20 to 30% and what isn't. And I guess the important thing to remember about that value, that number as well, is that if 20 to 30% of issues can be found, that means 70 to 80% of issues will not be found. And that is certainly the way we should be looking at the use of automated tools, remembering all of the issues that are not found with automated tools. So I actually go a little bit further than that. So I feel like the web has become a lot more complex since that number was first kind of investigated, 20 to 30%, and we've kind of gone along with it for a long time. But I would say, and this is anecdotal, there's been no testing done apart from what I've observed myself. So this is my own thoughts are that automated testing tools probably only cover about 10 to 15% of issues. And I think even that might be generous from my experience as someone who's done a lot of accessibility auditing and a lot of the manual testing involved. I would say 10 to 15% in today's very complex web, the way the web is now, how complex it is. So I think 10 to 15% is also the way we should be looking at automated tools as well. And so that means that potentially 85 to 90% of accessibility issues are being missed by automated tools. So just to finish up, some of the key takeaways: automated tools can have their place, but they barely scratch the surface of accessibility on your website. So it's essential to understand their limitations and to mitigate those limitations. They can be useful if you know what they do and what they don't do, and you have other measures in place as part of your accessibility strategy to make sure that you are not leaving a lot of potentially very serious accessibility issues on your website. So using an automated testing tool alone, even if it comes up with 0 issues or a perfect score in success green, that does not ensure that your digital content is accessible. So it's most likely to result in a highly inaccessible experience for users if you only use automated tooling for your accessibility testing. And just quickly, so what you can do, build up your own knowledge and skills, make incremental improvements to your work. So learn different accessibility techniques, different accessibility issues, and build in ways of working that include those accessibility practices in your work, and do it a little bit at a time. And once that becomes habit, take on the next bit and the next bit. Keep growing your accessibility capability in no matter what your work is, as a designer, developer, content author, even managers of teams in digital. There's always things that you need to know about accessibility to make sure that it's done right. Learn some basic manual testing techniques, like how to test with a keyboard, etc., and a screen reader. At a basic level, it's not as hard as it might seem. Don't go it alone. You're here now, so that's great. Follow Inclusive Design 24 and other accessibility conferences, and the people involved, the presenters, follow them. My LinkedIn has become so much more valuable since I've added so many people from the accessibility world. When I was a developer, it was all recruiters, and now every day is more information about accessibility, different perspectives. It's amazing. It's such a great resource when you follow the right people. So don't go it alone. There's a lot of misinformation around accessibility as well that's thrown around. And when I was a developer, I tried to go it alone. And then when I got into accessibility, I realized there's a whole bunch of things. There's certainly a lot I didn't know, but there was also a lot of things that I thought I knew wrong. So you've got to be careful of that as well. So follow the people in the industry, and there's so many great people to learn from, as we've seen in this entire conference. Get an accessibility audit to understand the current state of what you're working on. So if you're going to use automated tools, get an audit done from an external accessibility agency or an external accessibility person to understand what the differences are, what the gaps are. So see what the automated tools are finding, see what an audit finds, and then learn from those differences, and learn as part of the making incremental improvements and building up your knowledge, learn from the results of that audit and building those better practices. And then most importantly, involve people with disability throughout the process. In every part of the process, get the advice of people with lived experience, and that is going to set you off in the right direction. And then you can get the best out of the automated tools when you are also doing all of those things at the same time. So with that, thank you very much for your time and listening. Check me out on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find with a simple search. I have a fairly unique name. So add me on LinkedIn. Check out our team's LinkedIn page, the TTC Digital Accessibility Practice LinkedIn page, where we will let you know when we have a free webinar coming up or training coming up or just some handy little tips. And you can go to our website, accessibility.ttcglobal.com, to also see what we're up to. And that's all from me. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Beau. Really do appreciate that talk. It was yeah, just fascinating. So much stuff to think about. I especially love that last point. Yes, get people who actually live with disabilities to get involved with the testing, because there's only so much that tooling can do. There's only so much you can do. We've had a couple of questions in, so I'll take this one quickly from Eric Meyer.
Yep.
With the internet plan example that you showed, would you recommend using something like CSS Grid to place that post heading content above the headings, or maybe just use a different markup structure overall?
Yeah, definitely that's an option. I think anything that is going to allow you to make sure that the related content to the heading is after the heading. You do have to be somewhat careful. You can't just rejig the whole visual layout of the page with the CSS. Well, I mean, you can do that with the CSS, but you don't want to do that. So you don't want to jumble things up completely, but making small adjustments like that. So you've often maybe a date or a category of maybe news item or something like that will be before the heading. So if you can have that in the markup after the heading and use CSS to adjust, like with Grid or Flexbox or whatever it might be, then definitely that is a great option to use if you can't change the design, or if you really don't want to change the design.
Yeah, and there are so many more tools now that we never had before, especially with
Exactly.
CSS, with, as you say, Flexbox and Grid, and stuff like that. Yeah, so lots of really good things that you could do there. I think another question that has come in, which is, I think this is, you might find it fun or not. What's the worst thing that you've seen that has passed automated testing? 100% on Lighthouse, and you've just looked at it and gone, this is
Oh,
rubbish.
I mean, I think the best example of that is I can't remember the name of the author of the article, but there's an article out there of the most inaccessible website you can make that gets 100% on Lighthouse. So if you search for that, you should find the article. Yeah, so I mean, that's a great example. And to read through that article and just see like exactly what you can do if you really tried. Obviously, most people aren't trying to make an inaccessible website. But the important thing is, as I pointed out, with a lot of those different types of issues, that can be really big issues. That can be complete blockers for different types of users. So yeah, there definitely can be some bad things. I couldn't really tell you. So in our testing, when we do accessibility audits, we don't use any automated tooling. For us, it's more time consuming to use an automated tool and sift through the results than it is, because we need to test the entire website anyway manually, as we saw. So I think a lot of people probably look at automated testing as something that can augment manual testing. In a way, it can. If you're not doing a full, complete audit, you're just trying to find as many accessibility issues as possible. Absolutely, it can. They can find some things and augment your manual testing as well. But for someone who does that manual testing every day, it does become quicker to just do the manual testing, because so an automated tool won't let's say it won't. As we saw with the image issue, I guess I'll point out. So it might find that there's no alt attribute on the logo of a web page, but we still don't know if the alt text is accurate. So I'll need to go and look at that anyway. So I'm going to be looking at that element. I'm going to see if there's no alt attribute myself. So a lot of the tests you have to do anyway, despite automated testing. So it can be actually time consuming to sift through all the results, more time consuming than it would be to just not use the automated tools.
And I've certainly found when I've used automated tools, they as well as giving you a false sense of security, they also come up with quite a few false negatives as well. So I
Yeah.
was looking at my blog and I thought, oh, well, yeah, I'll run Lighthouse. And it said, this element is not keyboard focusable. And I sort of hit tab a few times and went, oh, yeah, it is. And I think, you could
Yeah.
spend a lot of time sort of going down, paths which you just don't need to because the tooling is wrong. On that point about the image description, you sort of mentioned it a bit, but obviously AI is the next big thing at the moment.
Mm.
Is there something that AI can do here? So you talked about, you might have a picture of a laptop, but the description says it's delicious blueberry cheesecake.
Mm.
Is there anything, even automated or not automated, which would just go, oh, hang on, there's a mismatch here? Or do you think that's still something that's sort of best left to humans looking at things?
Um, it does seem like AI in terms of image recognition can be pretty strong. Definitely seen some good examples of it. I think the question will be, can it be consistently right enough? And it does have to, it's a pretty high bar because we don't want to be relying on something that's just maybe 70%, 80% and ignoring the other 20%. So I think yes, I do think AI is going to do very well augmenting these tools to become better, but I also think we're going to have a lot more not necessarily clear cut 100% this is an issue from AI. We're going to have, I think this might be an issue, have a look at it. So maybe the way that might end up working is it might give a percentage, if it can, a percentage of how wrong it thinks that alt text is. And then maybe at least people can focus on the ones that do seem to be the worst. But again, it can actually end up with a false sense of security around the fact that we're trusting AI to be correct. And the other thing to remember, I guess, because of, I guess I didn't really explain why there'd be that weighting of percentages. So if it was mud cake with mint frosting for a laptop's image, you'd think AI would be able to pick that up and you're going to fix that issue. But what about all the alt text that are actually correct? Is
Yeah,
AI going to recognize that they're correct, or is that going to say,
that's an
"Oh, you should
excellent
look at this, a
point. Yeah.
20% chance that that's wrong," and you look at it and you're
Unfortunately,
like,
we're going to
"No,
have to wrap up now. We will.
no
Oh,
Sorry,
worries,
time's
I
got.
could carry on talking about this all evening. I think this
I
is
know.
brilliant. Thank you, Bo. Cheers.
no worries at all."
Thank you very much. So, if you want to
Thank
carry
you.
on the conversation, please feel free to do so in the on our Mastodon or Blue Sky or anywhere else on the web. But sorry to cut you off there, but we have run out of time. If you liked this session, please hit the YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to our channel to be kept in the loop on any of our future events. Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our Platinum supporters, Accessibility Cloud and Intopia, our Silver supporters, Intuit, and our Bronze supporters, the Law Office of Laney Feingold, Mantis & Co, and Vispro. Inclusive Design 24 will be back on the air with our next session. We'll see you then.